G'day everybody. This is just a filler in for where we left last time. The things that I cast. So when the resin's gone off, you just pop them out. Stormtrooper head. It needs some flash cleanup, and then it's done. So today we're doing the space crates. Now these are for the diorama, but I've done them together as a whole, separate sort of thing, like the pennants, because they're crates. You could use them for sci-fi things and all that sort of thing. At the moment, getting a good sand. This is so that they're fairly shiny plastic, which means that things aren't going to really want to stick. Since I want to paint them and I do want to glue to them, I've given them all a reasonable tooth up, and that's, I think it's about a 120 grit sandpaper, and I just made sure that I sanded the face of each of the surfaces, so it's 6 sides, 2 halves, top and bottom. And they're all really sanded and ready to go. I'm using just offcuts left over from other things that I've made. So these are the pieces that I've cut out of other things where I've used the original bits, and these are just the offcuts. But because they're all interesting shapes, I keep them in little plastic bags and I just tip them into the box here so that I can rummage through and find some interesting shapes. So gluing them together, there's a bit of paper top and bottom so that the holes aren't still holes when they're finished, they're just indents, and then glue them together so that they don't come apart, so that we can start putting some decorations around the outside of them. These are actual Star Wars lollie boxes. My wife bought one for me just as a present, and when I saw it I went, oh, that's an interesting thing, I'll be able to use that. So I found them in Kmart in Australia, and they just come with some sugar lollies and a little plastic, looks like a keyring character with a sticker. It was actually a fun amount of stuff to get out of a little space, and I ended up with Chewbacca and Darth Vader and C-3PO, so it's good, it's got to be good. Now I'm just gluing with super glue the interesting details on. So there wasn't a huge plan for when I started. I've got the picture from the backgrounds, but it was more so just find a shape, make them look a little bit like the pictures. Again, they're not the focus of the build, so when it comes to putting them on in the diorama, I don't necessarily want people to walk past and go, oh my goodness, look at those crates. They're in the background, so as long as they've given the impression that they're spacey, that they're weathered, that they could be generators, they could be containers, they could be who knows what, I'm happy with that. So I'm putting a little bit of detail into them, but I'm not going to spend hours and hours and hours on these things. They're just in the background. The green and white things, the white is ladders that I've made for Warhammer stuff, so I cut the little ladders out and I just glue them to show that there's a ladder on a wall. The green things, when they get either put either side of a plain bit of cardboard or made into 3, form metal girders. They look like metal girders that have been cast. So I chopped them up here and glued them one every second face, so 3 of the 6 faces on the box, which made it look like it was bound with strapping or something or other when they're finished. So it was 3 for each one, just gluing them down, sticking them on, trying not to glue them to myself. That happened a couple of times. And then when they're all done together, it was then a matter of gluing the interesting bits on the faces that were otherwise. So I did the ones that hadn't been glued on. So I was aware that they're going to be near the wall, which means that there'll be a back edge that doesn't have to have a lot of detail, and therefore I tried to make it that 4 of the sides were interesting, but I wasn't particularly worried about making sure that every side had all the detail that the face sides have. So there you go, little straps on them, just interesting. So when they get painted and then you wash over the top of them, that detail will pop out a little bit more. And there's some really good 3D files that you can buy, and I think there's some share ones that you can get if you wanted to do it, but this is just the old school crafty sort of way. So for all of you out there that don't have 3D printers, it's certainly possible to get a decent result. These are, they look like gaskets, but they were leftover cutout bits from a cosplay thing that my daughter did. I think on the model now, just putting them on, they just end up looking like they could be air conditioning, electrical circuit or something or other. Again, interesting enough shapes, but not trying to make this the focal point of the whole of the build for when the job gets finished. What to say? 3 of them down. Had to get them all, do them all together. I made 3 of them look similar in the thing because I liked it. I'm not sure how many I'll use per diorama. I may use 2, which is why I've done all 4 of them just in case. I may only use 1. I'll wait and see after all the helmets on pikes go on just how much space is left, because the idea is that it is for the figures to be on it. So this was how it was, gluing them all together and just putting small pieces in filling in the gaps from after I've done all the major componenty bits. It's just cardboard, so it's really easy to cut shapes if you want to make a shape a bit more interesting, and making sure each of them was interesting enough in itself and Star Warsy enough looking, spacey enough looking. They're quite easy. You could use them for sci-fi crates. They'd work with Star Trek or any of those sorts of sci-fi type things. And that's pretty much the construction sort of done. All together, all up from the beginning of gluing, sanding and gluing through to finished painting probably is only about 2 hours work. That's the little girders there. The end of this video is, I'll show you the girders. So out of camera I sprayed them with a silver, so that they had a metallic-y sort of thing. That's in a spray can. It's an oil-based paint, so the water base going over the top of it and the white meant that the white scattered a little bit, and I did do 2 coats, but I liked the finish because it saved me having to chip away and weather at them because some of the silver was showing through anyway. And that's it when they get the white on. Then it was just a matter of putting a black wash into the detail to try and pick out the details and make them pop out a whole lot more. And then pad that off, and I padded it off, liked what was going on, decided I wanted to see a bit more detail, and did a double application across all of them. So they all got an application and then a pad off. And then I went back in and just put a bit more on to what I'd done and made sure that I didn't take as much off the second time. So after the black wash is done, I also then went and did a brown wash, the same wash that I used on the buildings. Now at this point in time the buildings are done, but I thought I'd do all of the containers, the space crates, as a crate video, and go back to the doing the walls and the buildings as a separate build video, keeping going with the build that we've done so far. But this is so that all the crates are done, so it's a little bit out of order for how everything was worked, but it is all together as one thing. So that's the black wash done. Then there's just the brown wash that I've made up. The brown wash is the black wash with brown added to it. So this just gives you a little bit more of a dirt sort of a finish. It's the weathered sort of, it's in the desert. I went for no rust for this because I figured if it's on Tatooine, I'm thinking that they're not having a lot of water on them, so they're not rusty so much as just grimy and gritty. And there you go, that's how they turned out. So they're all their little fiddly, tricky looking things will look good in the background. They'll look pretty funky, and this is how they look if you put them in the thing. So next is the little girders. So it's just a matter of cutting that to length. I'm putting them on an angle, so I did cut them off on a diagonal so that they'll stick out of the sand on a funny angle. And the idea of these ones is that they're just a bit of junk that's been buried in amongst all of those poles, and the sand's sort of covered them over. Same thing again, I've gone for gritty and grimy in the paint job. It's very simple for these. They just got silver paint followed by a black wash. They didn't get the brown wash, and I think that makes them look quite steely. Since they're going to be buried in the sand, half buried, I didn't feel any need to spend any extra time on them. These are so much less of a feature than even the crates are. So there's 2 of them, and then they just got a wash over the silver, and they were done. So there you go. There's a method for doing it, and I really hope you've enjoyed this little quick video. As always, we've got Redbubble. If you enjoyed the video, please go and check out the Redbubble site and the designs that are on there. Feel free to buy anything if you like it, and leave a comment if you want to know anything, and I'll see you on the next video.